are. And I would guess most of us were fully ready to say goodbye to 2020. The changes imposed upon us, the loss of normal, whatever that meant to us. But of course, there were benefits too. And for Deb and I, one of the most obvious was our family time. Maybe you can relate to this. For us, we had the opportunity through daycare providers quitting work, et cetera, that we were able to watch our grandson for 4 months. And what a gift of time that was. Also, it was very tiring, but what a gift of time that was. Maybe you had some of the same kinds of experience. But now we're into 2021. And guess what? The world didn't change overnight. The political chaos continues. We still have a pandemic going on. People have different perspectives. Some people we might say might be making dumb decisions. But through this all, as we look at 2021, as I got up early this morning and reflected on Rotary, I think that we just need to kind of ground ourselves in the fact that we're all called to be leaders in whatever we're doing. And I've seen a lot in the last couple of days of our national leadership. You can pick whoever you want, that are calling for us to go back to ground ourselves and embrace the common good. The phrase, the common good. So what is the common good today? How do we understand that collectively? And I think as Rotarians, I would submit to you that we are in a great place to be leaders with this in terms of helping our communities and those that we influence to understand what the common good is. Because we as Rotaries are committed to a common good. And we're all familiar with the 4-way test. We say it each week. But alongside this, if you go into the foundational documents of Rotary, there's a set of guidance principles that are called the object of Rotary, the objectives of Rotary. What's Rotary all about? And I think it's important for us as we start 2021 as Rotarians to internalize what participating in Rotary really means. And in fact, how does that participation help support us to be representatives, to be examples of taking on and understanding the common good, a common purpose and direction. So this morning, before I say a quick prayer, I just want us to start the year off and remind ourselves of the objects of Rotary. The first object is to develop the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service. So how we network together, how we work together. And let's just recall that and understand that as we move into 2021. Second, high ethical standards in business and professions. The recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations and the dignity of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. So high ethical standards surrounding our professional and work activities. Third, the application of the ideal of service above self in each of our lives as Rotarians, whether personal life, business, or community. Fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service. Doesn't that give you a quick sense of what a common good might be? We're all working together under these 4 objectives of Rotary. So to live out these objectives, the thing that we are most familiar with is the 4-way test. And if you use the language right out of Rotary, it's a nonpartisan and non-sectarian ethical guide to use for personal and professional relationships. I can tell you that in the last 9 months, there's been a number of times in conversations I've been engaged in that I've brought up the fact that Rotary has this ethical test, these four factors. For me personally, this is a bedrock. Alongside of my Christian faith, this 4-way test influences my actions, my conversations, my decisions, and my responses. How about you? Does this make a difference? in what you're doing, what you might post on social media, what you might say to somebody in the course of a normal day, how you deal with your family, how you engage with your family. So let's remind ourselves of the 4-way test. Number 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? I think that's really important right now. And 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And that's really important as well. So I hope that we enter into not only today, but also into 2021, we keep in mind that we can be and truly are representatives of the common good. We may have different political opinions. We may believe in a different way of doing something, but we've got some bedrock. We've got some foundational values and ethics that we can rally around and support each other on, hold each other accountable, and move into 2021 and really make a difference in our communities. So please pray with me. God, give us the courage, strength, and grit to be representatives of our common good as a Rotarian. Bless us with nourishment to sustain our physical health and provide us your guidance, Lord, wisdom, and discernment as we live out the ideal of service in our personal and professional lives in our community. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, I see I am unmuted. And that was a very moving and invocation, and I think the rest of the club really appreciates it. I feel like I should share that I went to bed last night with a heavy heart, and then I didn't sleep very well. But just coming onto the Zoom meeting and turning my computer on at 6:45 and seeing the smiling faces and the conversations, it's really made me appreciate the group even more, our club. And I hope that this feelings that I'm having right now sustains me throughout the day. So thank you, all of you, for that. And I hope that you all had a very Merry Christmas and a great New Year. And I think 2020, we can probably relate it to a petulant child that hasn't quite given up for one more week. But hopefully now that we're 53 weeks into 2020, we can start 2021 and try to put the past behind us. I don't know, Kathy, if we have any guests other than our speaker?
No guests.
Okay. We have a few announcements. Obviously, the governor has opened up dining to restaurants, and I spoke to Steve Allen, and he's on this morning, and he can feel free to correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but we're not quite ready to be going back to doing live meetings at Brackets, unfortunately, but I think-
Steve?
Yes.
We're having a meeting today discussing all the options, because as every executive order that comes out, there's a lot of stuff to kind of translate and make sure we're doing things properly. First, making sure we're safe, but hopefully by the end of the day, we'll be reaching out to everybody. And I think that we'll be able to start things up again. But we just want to make sure we're doing everything properly. And then you'll hear from us later on today.
Thank you, Steve. That made my, and I think too, with Strive, those kinds of answers will be coming. So appreciate you keeping us on top of that. Sheila and Nancy, do we have any community service updates? I know with the holidays, or perhaps we found out how the bell ringing was as far as dollars that we raised.
I haven't heard anything about the dollars. That usually takes a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah, and other than that, we don't have anything right now.
All right. Lori Boline, I see that you're on this morning, and this is, hate to put you too much on the spot, but I'm going to. Are there any updates as to how the Christmas season went with 360 communities?
We had, good morning, everyone. We were able to serve just under 750 families for Armful of Love. So thank you for that, everyone who participated. And We gave out a lot of Christmas meals. We had folks who didn't participate in Armful of Love, but who donated anyway. And so we were also able to serve those last minute families that came to us who needed help. And we gave out tons of food and tons of toys and tons of Christmas gifts to everyone. So thank you all for everyone who helped with that. So it was good. Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. And I know Steve Allen would never toot Brackett's horn in this manner, so I'll toot it for him. But I understand that Brackett's delivered several meals, I think over 30 to Lewis House. And God bless them for doing that. So that's, that Rotarian.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Yes, and I know Doc Ock delivered some food as well on Christmas Eve. So yeah, we just appreciate everyone who helps us serve the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Steve.
Yes.
We've got a blood drive coming up, January 30th. Yeah, can't forget that.
And I think Kathy will send out email reminders.
Yes.
Is there any
51 people signed up so far, so we're doing well. 51.
Nice.
And only about 5 Rotarians. So
room to grow.
Well, we're doing what the church, so that's making a big impact. Yeah.
Fantastic. Are there incentives this year too, like there has been in the past?
Actually, they're doing the antibody test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's just included by giving your blood, and they give you the results later. Find out.
Yep, you'll find out in a week.
That's great, because that costs money if you're paying for it on your own, and it's, I understand, not cheap. So thank you for that update, Mike.
9 to 5, Crossroads Church.
All right.
Oh, by the way, we need a couple volunteers to help in the afternoon. I've got the morning covered, but there's a 1 to 3 shift and a 3 to 5 shift if anybody wants to help.
Okay.
It's just serving refreshments in the canteen.
So that we can get an additional $1 out of Pastor Paul. What's the address of Crossroads Church?
It's on Galaxy, but it's Crossroads. Wait, it's corner of Cedar and Dodd. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Richard, do you have 30 seconds to give us a little plug for your Taste of Lakeville meeting following this?
Good morning. Short meeting right afterwards. Promise to keep it short and sweet. We will be making a decision soon on whether we hold with the May date or move to August. So that'll be a fun item of discussion today. Make this pitch each week. If anybody wants to step up and join one of the Taste of Lakeville teams, we could use the support. And for everyone, just start thinking about auction items and people you might know for a sponsor, and that'll all start falling into place here. So good meeting today, and we'll start right away and look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any other announcements that I may have passed over? Okay, well, let's get into our program. Gary Vogel, would you like to introduce our guest speaker today?
I'd be happy to do so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Everybody? Good. I've been looking forward with anticipation. I'll get into Tom's bio in a minute here, but I've been aware of who Tom is in his business and his consulting business for some time now. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about the unique or certainly additional components of running businesses that are family owned. That they're unique in many respects. I mean, they have to carry on a business as any other business, but they have an added component of issues, or at least concerns that need to be addressed in the course of that. But Tom began his career in the family business consulting practice in 1980 as one of the few professionals addressing family-owned businesses in the United States. He integrates the notion of spirit in his work with family businesses and assists the his family business clients with succession planning, leadership development, business planning, board development, and wealth preparation planning. In addition to consulting, Tom has served as a professional in residence at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis and served on the advisory board for the Center for Family Enterprise for 10 years. Formerly, he was an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas, where he co-taught a class in family business management for 10 years. He is one of the founding members of and fellow of the Family Firm Institute in Boston. Additionally, he serves as a member of the editorial board of the Family Business Review and has authored articles on success strategies for family-owned businesses and has been widely quoted in publications such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Business Week, Corporate Report, Nation's Business, and the Star and Tribune. Tom is a frequent guest on NBC Weekend Today show and a periodic participant in the Minnesota Public Radio's mid-morning and midday programs. Tom also has an online column that appears in Elite Advisor Forum and has previously had a column that ran for 6 years in the Minnesota Business Magazine. Tom is the founder of the Minnesota Family Practice of the Year Award, now in its 13th year, celebrating outstanding family businesses. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Tom, and with that, I'll turn the program over to him.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you all for inviting me today. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to share my ideas, particularly to a group of Rotarians like yourselves who are so committed to generosity and service and so forth. And I was, as many of you were, I was really moved by what Doug had to say about the importance of the common good. And from my perspective, he's already given my presentation, so we'll just close for today. No, but he did a terrific job. He really did a terrific job of identifying the importance of the common good. And so what we're going to do today is spend just a few minutes talking a little bit about family businesses. And one of the questions that comes up periodically is the fact, is the question about, well, why family businesses? Well, most people don't realize that family businesses are the backbone of our economy. They're almost 95% of the businesses in this country are family owned and operated. 160 of the Fortune 500 are family owned. Family businesses contribute over 50% of the gross national product, and they're the source of most new employment. So that's what we want to talk about today, about both in terms of their success and what makes them so challenging. And so Kathy and I have practiced this. We're going to do screen share and see what happens. There we go. So what I want to talk about to start with is this overlap between the family and the business system. And you can see here these circles, the red and the blue, represent the difference, the family circle and the business circle. And you can see how different they are. On the family side, it's an emotion-based system. On the business side, it's a task-based system. And so you can see there's some really inherent conflicts in family businesses just by virtue of the difference of the two systems. And then when they overlap, this is an ideal overlap. And this slide represents the success of family businesses. And the research is that family businesses outperform the Standard & Poor's 500 when they operate around best family business practices. So they're really, 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 they can be really very successful. But on the other hand, that's a constructive overlap. But oftentimes the overlap is so significant that the business is vulnerable to family issues and entanglements that are a part of all of our families, and business and financial differences will erode family relationships. And one of the common things that comes up, particularly over the holidays that we've just been through, are how business discussions will erode family relationships, and all the family does is talk about the business and so forth and so on. And a few years ago, I had a client who was a son in a family business said to me, I've never had the experience of going home from work. I'm always on the job. And he was sort of in the middle, with his family and his father they'd be going to church on Sunday and he'd be in the back seat and his dad would decide to have a business meeting. And so that was his experience of difficulty. The other thing, Gary did a terrific job of reciting all of those credentials, but what he missed, Gary, you missed something. I just want to mention this, is that I've worked with my own family, my own kids. And a number of years ago, this is again a long time ago, the office manager asked me if my daughter Kirsten would be interested in working in the company and sharing the receptionist position with another high school student for the summer. So I checked and she wasn't available. And I said, well, what about my son, John? And she said, wasn't he a little young? And I said, well, would you interview him? So she said yes. And so anyway, I went home and I said, John, there's this opportunity down at the company and here's what it pays. And it paid more than fast food. So he got very excited about that. Then I said, now, John, I'd like to suggest you wear a shirt and tie for the interview. But anyway, so I said, you get down there and handle it however you want. Well, he got down to the office and he got hired on 1-day probation. But the day that it was announced that he was going to be working there, I began to choke and do all the things I've seen my clients do. And I started saying things to myself. I hope he doesn't embarrass me. I hope he doesn't act down here like he acts at home. And I hope he works hard. Now on the home front, my daughter Kirsten, who was not available to take the job because she was going to the University of Minnesota in a special program for high school students to get them involved in science careers and being paid to go there, we'd come home and she'd say, he took my job. I said, what do you mean he took your job? You weren't available. Well, John would come home and say, well, Dad took me out to visit a client today, and then he took me out to lunch. And I thought, holy smokes, how did I get into this mess? And I began to realize, in a real personal way, the overlap and how it affects people. And even today, my wife works with me part-time. We have the same sorts of issues periodically. So the circles are dynamic. I was doing this presentation a number of years ago, and a young man stood up and said, if those circles are equal in size, he said, if my dad were drawing those circles, his business circle would be very, very big, and his family circle would be very small. Then he said, now if my wife were drawing those circles, her family circle would be really, really big, and her business circle would be very small. And he was going to sit down, and someone said, well, what do your circles look like? He said, well, I'd rather not say. So he was there in the middle, caught in the middle between his father and his wife, two people he really loved, and didn't know what to do. And the background was that 2 weeks prior to the seminar, the dad had called me and said, I'm in business with my 2 sons, and my older son is my heir apparent, and he's been terrific up until 2 years ago. But that's when he got married, and my daughter-in-law is the problem, and can you come and fix her? I said, no, I don't do that sort of thing. And he had it in his head that she was the problem. Well, what happens in family businesses is the dynamics that I'm talking about in terms of this overlap is an organizational problem that people within family business experience as an interpersonal issue, and the way they deal with it is to blame. So I want to go on now and talk a little bit about the boss. And this gets into what Doug was saying earlier about the common good, because whenever I mention the boss, everybody thinks I'm talking about their parents. And I say, sorry, Mom and Dad, I've just demoted you. You're no longer the boss around here. And the real boss is this acronym. And the B is for the business. And what do we need to do to take care of the business? Because that's really critically important. But even more important, I think, to some extent, is the O, which is what do you want for the other about what the other wants? And so if I'm in business with Steve and Gary and Michael, what do I want for them about what they want? And they need to know that I'm committed to helping them be successful, and vice versa. And the goal here is to have a reciprocal commitment to each other's success. And that's what creates a team, is people committed to helping each other be successful. Then the first S is what do you want for yourself? It's important to be able to articulate what you want for yourself, but you can't have a team if people only think about what they want for themselves. And so that's the reason for the common vision, which you're going to be talking about in just a second or so. The idea is to make a contribution to the common good out of your love, your generosity, your sense of abundance, and the trust that if I make a contribution now, other members of the family will do the same thing. And then the last S is what do you want for the other stakeholders, which I would define as the family as a whole, the employees, the customers, the vendors, the board. So the goal here is to create win-win solutions without the boss to help you become a vision-driven, family-owned business. So I want to talk a little bit about, you saw when we first started, I have a book that came out a couple of years ago called The Soul of Family Business. And I want to start by just mentioning what soul is for me, which gets into the common vision. The soul is the essence or the embodiment of all of your family values. It has to do with everything that has to do with who you are, both in terms of your family, all the things that are good, all the things that have been difficult. And it's all embodied. It becomes your secret sauce. It's what distinguishes you and differentiates you from all of your competitors. So, so having a common vision is essential, and it incorporates the things that I have here, which includes the common vision, which includes a little family prayer for loving kindness, people's individual visions, the reciprocal commitment to each other's success. And there's a synonym for the old part of the boss, which is called kything. And kything is a Scottish word that means connecting at a spiritual level. And then the third or the second synonym for the old part of the boss is called psychic energy, which I'll get into here in just a second. So this is an example now of what I create, or a common vision for a family, or the common good. And this was a family where the was a father and two sons who worked together in a business, a suburban business not very far from Lakeville. And the father and two sons worked with the older son, worked side by side, and the dad and the son hadn't spoken to each other in 4 years. And they ran all of their communication through the younger brother, who finally said to them, "I've had it with you guys. If you don't work things out, I'm out of here." So this common vision was created by the dad, his wife, the oldest son and his wife, and then the younger son. And it goes, in our family and business, we promote respect, honesty, fairness, and encourage an environment that is loyal and unified. At the heart of our vision is our commitment to generosity, quality, and appreciation of each other's gifts. As a hardworking and dedicated family, we communicate and celebrate our spirituality. Now, they were a very conservative, traditional Catholic family in one of the suburbs. Then the family prayer, which I think is really important. And the purpose of this prayer is to begin to program your subconscious about what you want. It's like high performance athletes, Olympic athletes, do the same thing. So the prayer is, may our family be filled with loving kindness. May our family be well. May our family be peaceful and at ease. And may our family be happy. Then everybody has their individual vision. And this just happens to be the individual vision sheet of the dad. He said, I am blessed. I and my family are blessed by God's abundance. I'm nourished by giving back. And he was sneaking around his community. He was semi-retired and sneaking around his community doing philanthropic things anonymously. And then kything is basically the other members of the family, their individual visions put in the third person. So every day he kyths to his wife Violet what she wants, his son, the youngest son Saul, his daughter-in-law, and his oldest son. So that's the process that I invite people to get involved in, and use the common vision as a contribution to the common good. Another characteristic of a successful family business is having a system about communication and management of differences. It includes talking skills, listening skills, conflict resolution skills, learning how to manage your differences in a win-win fashion rather than win-lose. And one of the things I tease about in my book is called, it's a very famous theory, it's called Hubler's Specadef theory. Steve, President, are you familiar with that, Steve? You're muted, Steve. I'm guessing you're not familiar with it. I'm a little shocked.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
As president of the Rotary Club, I thought you'd be involved and understand what that is. Well, what Hubler's Specadef theory, nobody's ever heard about it because it doesn't exist, other than there's a difference between us about what to do about our business. They, well, I better not bring that up because if I do, it's going to upset our family. We're all going to get together for Thanksgiving. So I don't want to bring it up. So then there's another difference. You think, no, it's Christmas. That's our family's favorite holiday. If I bring that issue up, it's really going to upset the apple cart, and I don't do it. So what happens is people inadvertently create the very problem they're trying to avoid by not talking about their differences. So it's really, 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 really important to talk about your differences and have direct discussion of issues. One of the things that's a big issue in family businesses, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, has to do with the fact that people have to retire. And many owner entrepreneurs and many professionals loathe the idea of doing that, and they equate it with death. And from my perspective, one of the things I refer this to is what I call the last challenge of entrepreneurship. And from my perspective, owner entrepreneurs don't have to leave the company, but what they have to do is change their job description and become the architect and the designer of the new ownership system and the new management and leadership system, and then to select something that gives them heart and meaning that they can continue to come to the company and continue to make a contribution and continue to have a sense of purpose. Number 4 is legacy. Legacy is, as you see here, Laura Nash used to teach at Harvard, and this is the model that she created for legacy. And you can see there, from her perspective, there are 4 buckets that you need to put your life into. It includes happiness, achievement, significance, and legacy. And she defines legacy as your gift to the future to help other people be successful. So a big part of what goes on in terms of succession planning in family business is to help the owner entrepreneur develop and understand what their legacy is. And according to Laura, you don't have to wait until you're 65 to start thinking about your legacy. You can start thinking about it right now and start moving in that direction. So like, for instance, one of the things that's a part of my legacy is that education has been a big part of my life. So one of the things I started to do, I've got 7 grandkids, and the oldest is 24 and the youngest is 6. But when they got to their first Christmas, I immediately enrolled them in a book club. And they used to get a book a month. My daughter was getting 4 books a month. She said, I can't possibly handle all these books. But the idea was I wanted to make sure that my grandkids were successful from an educational point of view. Number 5 is having an active board of directors. Every company has a board of directors, but normally they're inactive. So to have an active board of directors with outside advisory members at the very least. And the research on this, by the way, is that when they do, their companies are much more successful. And number 6 is to have what I call a family participation plan about what are the ground rules for entry into the business? What do you have to do educationally or experience-wise? And do you have to work outside the company before you come in? What's the compensation system? Compensation is a big issue in many family businesses. And all of that needs to be worked out on the front end rather than the back end. Number 7 is forgiveness. One of the things that I think is really, really critical is to be able to forgive each other and take what you learn on the weekends and bring it into the rest of your life. And in many family businesses, they don't do that. And that's why you'll see articles in the paper about family businesses that are end up suing each other. And the most recent one that I can think about was the Lund family a couple of years ago, where the daughter-in-law wanted to liquefy her stock and was unable to do that, and they ended up suing each other, that type of thing. So you need to be able to forgive each other. And then there are 3 types of meetings you need to have in family-owned businesses. Owner meetings and shareholder meetings. The only people who are owners and shareholders get to go to those. The second type of meeting are called employee meetings. The only people who are employed at the company get to go to those. And the third type of meeting are called family meetings. And the purpose of family meetings is basically to manage the overlap between the family and the business system. So the goal of a family meeting is to begin to manage that boundary and to do things in a positive way to prevent problems from occurring and manage differences in a constructive and a very positive way. Number 9 is the promotion of love and well-being. We're not going to get into today, but I've got a list, that was my David Letterman list that's in the book, like 10 obstacles to succession planning. And when I usually do that presentation, I ask people ahead of time, what do you think the number 1 issue is? And people talk about taxes, money, all kinds of things. Well, the number 1 issue from my perspective in terms of obstacles to succession planning is the lack of expression of appreciation, recognition, and love. And it's one of the reasons I have work is because people just don't do that. They take each other for granted. And as a result of that, it causes problems. The senior generation, in my opinion, desperately wants to be recognized for what they've done over the last 30 or 40 years, but will deny to their dying day that they need that kind of recognition or are concerned about it. And they basically, the younger generation loves their parents, but takes them for granted and doesn't say anything about that. And vice versa, where the senior generation loves their kids, but they take them for granted and don't tell them how much they love them and so forth and so on. And so that's a big issue. The example here that I wanted to mention is it was 2 brothers basically in a family-owned business where the older brother decided to forego his college education to help his father complete some government contracts that were necessary for the company's continued success, which he did. his younger brother graduated from high school, went to college, and after he graduated from college, went to Europe and spent the whole summer in Europe. And when he came back from Europe at the end of the summer, his dad placed him in the company as a vice president and had equal salary with his older brother. Well, the older brother was really, really upset about that, mentioned it to his dad. His dad wouldn't do anything about it, so he quit and set up a competitive company over in Wisconsin. And they used to bid against each other on public contracts. And what happened was the older brother was a good Samaritan and stopped over in Wisconsin one January night when somebody had gone off the road and was helping somebody. And another car came along, a drunk driver came along and hit his car and knocked it into him. And he had to be airlifted to St. Paul Ramsey Hospital where he had surgery. And when he woke up, his brother was holding his hand and said, "I want you to know that I love you." Well, the first time I heard that, I just welled up with feeling. It was like, holy smokes. That's how powerful that sort of thing is. And then the last thing is gratitude, service and philanthropy, because the antidote to consumption is gratitude, service, and philanthropy. And, I'm speaking to the choir now, but I'm speaking to Rotarians about the importance of service. And as Doug mentioned today, service above self is the Rotary model, and was created by the Rotary Club in Minneapolis, number 9, the service above self. But there's a guy named T. Michael Thompson who wrote a book called The Congruent Life. And in there, he says that service is on the outside like prayer is on the inside. So having a sense of gratitude for your blessings is really important. There's a guy that I like to quote, his name is Robert Emmons, and he said, gratitude is the way the heart remembers kindness, cherish interactions with others, compassionate actions of strangers, surprise gifts, and everyday blessings. So this is my legacy model. This is the model I, basically promote. The work I do is usually in this area right here, and other professionals do the other things. But part of what's really important is the heritage, the family values, and the service, which I call wealth preparation planning, and get the family involved in those sorts of things. And then lastly is this is my model for succession planning. You can see here, in order to be a successful family business, you have to have 4 plans: the ownership plan, the management and leadership plan, the business plan, and the family plan, about how you're going to be a family without the undue influence of the business. And one of the things that I think is important that I've developed over the years is the importance of building the emotional equity of the family while you simultaneously build the equity of the company. And this blue area here is what motivates owner entrepreneurs to do the work I'm talking about, like economic security, health, family unity. Nobody wants to be in their 60s and 70s and have their family be torn apart by business and financial differences. And lastly is legacy, which we defined earlier as your gift to the future. And I would also add about how you're going to be remembered. So those are the things that are really important, I think, in terms of structuring family businesses. So what I want to do now is we've got some time for questions, comments, feedback. So I'd like to involve you in that process. Well, there's Gary.
Yeah, hi. I was going to ask you, the one story you talked about, the 2 brothers, it kind of reminded me of the biblical story of the prodigal son.
Yes.
And I don't know, I guess the father forgave the son, but the brother had an issue with him.
Right.
And I guess you probably see that where you have family being treated differently in businesses, and at least maybe having the perception by the siblings or the children, if you want to call it that, or the next generation, that they're not being treated fairly by the founder or the parent, if you want to call them that. And the other thing too, I think you see is maybe a change in values too between the entrepreneurial generation, the one that started the business, and the ones that take it over in terms of how they want to promote it. So can you address those things, Tom?
Well, first of all, there's a difference between what I call equal and equity. And from my perspective, it's important to treat the adult children equitably rather than equally. And one of the things that happens in family businesses is that everybody is loved equally. They all want to be treated equally, and that's just not possible because people aren't equal, they're different. And so you have to come up with a plan that's equitable. There are 5 priorities to estate planning. It includes making a decision, number 1, about whether there's going to be another generation of the family involved in the business. And then the second priority is the economic security of the parents. That's another sort of important thing to do. The third priority is the equitable treatment of the adult children who are either in the business or out of the business. The fourth priority is the minimization of estate taxes. And then the fifth priority is basically a family awareness, so that the family has a discussion at a family meeting about what the estate plan is, and everybody understands what it is and how they're going to be treated. So all of that can be discussed on the front end rather than the back end. And I'm not sure about the other part of your question. You're muted.
I guess the values that the founding member of the business versus the generational the difference in generational values between the first, second, maybe even third generation of family ownership.
So like one of the things I do to create the common vision, and I think there was a question that came up on the screen about where do these values come from? Well, basically I asked the family, what are your family values that you would like to see perpetuated in the company? And then we use those values to create the common vision. And the common vision is designed to be an inspiration or a model of what the family is aspiring to. And it's where I'm, one of the things I didn't mention is how do you create unity in a family? And when I was younger, I was taught the way you create unity in a family is to compromise. And when I compromise, I feel terrible. So I don't recommend that. On the other hand, when I went to Sunday school with the nuns, I was taught that if you wanted to create unity, you had to give things up. And when I give things up, I feel worse than when I compromise. So I don't recommend that either. On the other hand, when I go to church on Sunday and they pass the plate and have to reach way, way down in my pocket to get some money out and put it on the plate, I feel good about that because I know I'm furthering the common good. And no one is ever going to get 100% of what they want in any family or any family business. And so everyone will be called at some time or another to make a contribution to the common good. And as I said earlier, out of their love, their generosity, their sense of abundance, and the trust that if I make a contribution now, you'll do it when your turn comes. So the idea is to take those family values and put them into practice and use them as an inspiration to unite you. And one of the things that I didn't get into today, but it's called psychic energy. There's a fellow whose name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he was it took me 3 weeks to figure out how to say that and practice it. But he was a research psychologist at the University of Chicago, and he wrote a book called Flow. And there are 3 things that create flow or fulfillment in people's lives: work, active leisure time, and relationships. And when he was talking about relationships, he was talking about family relationships. And he said basically that families cannot survive in today's environment without the regular infusion of what he called psychic energy. Now, he was talking about regular families. He wasn't talking about families of business and wealth that are at risk. He was saying regular families won't survive. So basically, families, if they're going to be successful, have to put something back into the family. They have to build the emotional equity of their family. And they do that through family gatherings, family history, family rituals. All those sorts of things are what create the psychic energy of the family unity. So, other comments or questions?
Steve here, I have a comment. Years ago, I don't have a family-owned business. I actually have a business partner, but when my daughters were teenagers, I would bring them in to do some data entry. And I found very early on that I had to be very specific in laying out what my priorities were, and it had to go along with theirs. My priorities was to get the tasks done, whether it was data entry or cleaning out a storeroom, but theirs was how much money they were going to make. And so there was always a little bit of give and take with that. And I'd say
Right.
$10 an hour. If you want more than that, you're not going to get a free lunch today. But if it's $10 an hour, and then I'd have to explain that it was cash, and
Right.
which was actually more like $12 an hour. I also learned that I couldn't have two of them in the office at the same time because they would, I guess I wound up being the man, you know, and so they would kind of argue against me and team up with each other. But if I had them as individuals, it worked out pretty dang well.
So, Steve, I want to comment about what you said. One of the things that happens in family businesses, and it has to do with competition in families, and basically, what do you think the kids are competing for in family businesses? What is it that drives that? Do you have any idea?
Since we don't really have a family business,
Yeah, but-
I hadn't put a lot of thought into that. So.
Basically, it's what they're competing for is your attention. So like when kids are being competitive with each other, and it's called sibling rivalry, you know, what they're rivaling about is usually is the recognition from the dad, because the dads have been so preoccupied with their business and their careers that the adult children are generally looking for their dad's recognition and appreciation and so forth.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have one, Steve and Tom, real quick. Tom, in our practice, we do a fair amount of succession planning for family-owned businesses.
What kind of practice?
We're a law firm.
Oh, okay.
And it's been my experience that, to touch on something you elaborated on earlier, I'm looking for maybe some practice points. As you're dealing with a multi-generational transition, not from parent to child, but from grandparents to grandchildren, or even the fourth generation, that's where we have experienced the greatest difficulty in that that energy that you spoke of. And what we see is that the grandparents who were there from daybreak to well past sundown, and hard work for them was being present. And the third and fourth generation, who are much more tech savvy, are capable of doing their jobs off site. And there's this disconnect between, I walk to school uphill both ways, and somebody being much more efficient with their time. And neither one of them respecting the inputs of the other to date. Any thoughts or practice points on how to bridge that gap?
I think the way I look at that, or the way I deal with it, is to have a discussion and create what I call a family participation plan about what are the ground rules about what it means to be a full-time employee in the company. And one of the things that happens in family businesses usually it's between the senior generation and the younger generation, and the kind of example used about going to school, going to school uphill both ways, is a lack of respect and acknowledgement for the differences between what was going on in the first generation and what's going on in the second generation or third generation. And I've got a client right now where the issue has to do with money, and the fact that the senior generation was extremely poor, made a lot of sacrifices, and so forth and so on, and now they're very wealthy. And of course now, and in addition to that, they're passing some of that wealth on to their kids, and from their perspective, they don't think the kids really appreciate, and so that becomes the vehicle for the difference between the generations. And so the way to deal with that is to have a plan, or have a discussion, or to have a family participation plan where all of those things are clarified, so that there can no longer be a difference of opinion that's an obstacle going forward.
Great questions and comments, Jim. If there are no other questions of Tom, I think I would like to thank you for coming in. And as you mentioned early, before our Zoom meeting actually got underway, I think this was getting up this early was a little bit of a challenge for you, or at least a sacrifice. So we really appreciate that.
It's a contribution to the common good, Steve.
There you go. Thank you. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the organization Treehouse, but it helps teenagers that are at risk throughout the Twin Cities. And so we will be giving an honorarium in your name.
Thank you.
Or as a thank you for coming and presenting to us this morning. And feel free to stick around as we kind of wind up. We go through happy dollars and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Usually we do some trivia and try to fleece the flock, as Pastor Paul likes to say, but being Zoom, it's a little more difficult to do that part. So on that note, are there any happy dollars? Crickets? Okay. Well, then we will end our meeting with the four-way test. And as a reminder, please stick around as we will do a Taste of Lakeville quick meeting afterwards. So, and if you would all join me in the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it
fair to all concerned?
The goodwill
Goodwill and better friendships.
be beneficial?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Ding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. If you can now take a minute